welcome to week 2 of working on your wikis. So it was great last week. You got into your wiki topic teams and been in that lovely classroom. You've got the tables that are adjustable and all the teams had a really good individual space. And it was really good to see you starting to gel together in your teams to think about the issues that you want to explore and also start to get to know each other. Although I have to say that I have noticed not all teams have put up their team pages, which is one of the things I asked you to do last week. So let's just have a little think about these team pages and why they're so important. You're doing a collaborative task, and it's really important that you can use your team to its best ability. So everybody in your group has got different skills and experiences from all around the world, and you really need to draw that out and to be able to share that as a team to know how you can work together the most effectively. So the very first thing you should do when you begin a team project is get to know your team members. And that's worth spending some time on because it'll actually save you time in the long run, because somebody might start doing something who's not the best person to do it and you find out later on and then you've wasted all that time. So I really want to make sure that at the end of this session, every single team has a team page with a team photo and a brief description of each person in the team and what they bring to that team. So please make sure that's done by the end of the session today. I'm really going to look forward to checking up on that later, so do make sure it's done because I will check. I also want to have a quick word about team size, because you'll have looked around the room and seen that some teams have got maybe 8 people and there's a few teams that are quite dinky, like a 4-person team. That's no problem at all, and it's not going to impact on the amount of work that you need to do. So when we come to mark your wikis at the end, we're not looking for a specific quantity of work, we're looking for the quality of your ideas and the quality of your research. So if you're in a smaller team, you're going to produce a smaller wiki, and that's absolutely fine. It's not going to have any negative impact on your mark. Now you might be thinking, what about those collaborative pages, like the context and how we set up the global issue? If you're in a smaller team, you can write that more briefly. So maybe 1 paragraph will be enough. But if you're in a team of 8, for example, then we might expect more on that context page. So think about the size of team you're in and just feel confident that if you contribute and you work together as a team, you will produce something that's going to get you a fabulous mark. And we're not going to be comparing volume of work on the wikis. The last thing I want to say is just about our champion co-learners. So each team has a co-learner embedded within the team, but you'll have noticed that we have 4 co-learners who are floating around, and they came around and introduced themselves last week. So we have champions for each different area of the course. So Alex is our Analysing Global Progress champion, Simone is our Collecting and Understanding Data champion, and Paloma and Alicia are our champions for Innovating for Change. So they've come to those relevant workshops, and they'll be focused on helping you, if you're in one of those streams, to really maximise your impact on your own wiki. So do use them, say hi to them when they come around, show them what you're working on, and let them give you some guidance that's specifically just for you. The last thing I want to mention before we go into a bit more detail about what you should be working on this week is talking to your co-learner in your team about which skills you've chosen to work on during the wiki period. So remember at the start we had those questionnaires, and at the end of the questionnaire you chose 2 skills to focus on. So some of you might have already had a conversation with your co-learner, but if not, this is a really good week to do it. So have a think about how you can demonstrate growth in those 2 different skills and how you can show that to your co-learner. They'll have lots of ideas to help you think about how to do that, so make sure you capitalise on today's session and have that conversation. So today we're going to be focusing on research and beginning to document your writing on the wikis. Now, if you recall, last week I asked you to do a team page, to have a page that describes the scope of your global issue and a definition for what the issue is, and also to map the contributions of your different team members. Now, I know that some of you have done this in Google Docs, but it's really important that you actually copy and paste this onto your wiki at the end of each session. So when we finished last week's session, I was hoping to see a team page for every team and a page defining the scope and definitions. 2 or 3 teams managed a team page with beautiful photos. I love a photo. And I think only 1 team had a really good scope and definitions page. So we're a little bit behind the curve now, and you need to make sure that at the end of today's session, there is a team page, there is a scope and definitions page, there is some clarity around who is contributing what, and that you have also started to document your research and to begin your writing. So what do I mean by documenting your research? Well, you're going to be finding a whole load of different sources. So there's two things that you need to do with your sources. One is that you need to make a team bibliography. Now what I mean by that, if I can spell bibliography while I'm talking, is that every single source that's used on your wiki needs to be on a team bibliography page, probably the last page of your wiki. And on your bibliography page, you need to have a title for what the source is. So maybe it's the name of the article if it's a newspaper article or an academic paper. A link so that other people can find the same source. And then one sentence that says what the source is, so that you know before you click on it, oh, it's going to tell me about this topic or that topic. So you need to have that done as a team. So it's a good idea to start that page now, and every time you come across a new source, add it to that bibliography page. You also need, on your individual pages, to keep a list of all your sources. So when you're writing your individual pages, so if you remember, you're going to start doing research and writing today. So as you're writing, you need to have a method for citing relevant sources. I don't mind what convention you use, if you use Vancouver referencing with a little number in the text, or if you use Harvard referencing with the author name and date in the text. And you need to have an individual source list at the bottom of your page. If you do this now, as you're doing your research, it'll be a lot quicker in the end. It'll also give people a chance to see what sources you're bringing together, and other people might have suggestions of really good things for you to include. So these are the two things I want you to make sure you're doing with your sources. Another way of thinking about your sources is actually how you're using them. So we want you to be critical. So let's think a little bit about criticality. You need to think, what does the source tell you? So what does the source say? Is it interesting? Does it add something? Is it controversial? So interesting. I don't know if I'm going to fit controversial. I'll try. Controversial. And do you have any questions about the source? Now, one thing that sometimes students are confused about is that when they have a question about something, they think they need to know the answer, but you don't. So if you're looking at a source, it might be, say, an article from a newspaper, and you think, where did they get their data from? Where did that number come from? Even if you can't find the answer, write the question down, because it shows that you've been critical about the source, and that's a really key skill to develop. So just to recap with the sources, a team bibliography, all the different sources used by the team, your individual sources listed on the page where you're doing your writing, and then some evidence that you've been critical when you've thought about the sources. What does the source say? Is it interesting or controversial? And do you have any questions about the way the source has been written or where the data has come from? Now, the last thing I wanted to mention is a little bit about learning fitness. So if you remember, we had this skill grid at the start of the module. And you had some examples of the different skills, and you had to rate how good you think you are at them, and then pick 2 skills to work on for the end of the module. A lot of you picked this one, learning fitness. Now, this is about how to maximize your ability to learn. So if you remember, there are sort of biological things and social things that fit in this category. So some of the biological things are eating well, sleeping well, maintaining your body in the best state to supply your brain with all the nutrients that it needs. And the social things are things like sharing your worries with other students, being supportive to each other, and making full use of all the team and collaborative opportunities. Now, there's one way that I get a little bit of insight into your learning fitness, and that is with this. So every week, I can download a list of all the logins to your wikis and all the actions on your wikis. And I can see what time of day you've been working on your wikis. So we would expect this great big spike here and this one, because they are during class time on a Tuesday. This collates all of your actions over the entire week. And what I would also expect to see is absolute silence between midnight and daytime. And what I can see from here is that some people have been on between midnight and 4 a.m. And if I look over on the list here, I can see that there is 22 activations. Now, there is nothing important enough about the work on this wiki that needs to be done at 3 a.m. There's not even anything important enough that needs to be done after midnight. And if you can't fit in your work between sessions because you've got lots of other work on your degree, maybe you've got some deadlines, then let it go, don't do it. You don't need to be working between midnight and 6 a.m. on this. So I think we should have a competition. So if next week when I look at this diagram and I download this data, there is 0 activations between midnight and 6 a.m. for all the days of the week across the entire module, so that's all of you, the entire class will win a prize. A very awesome prize, probably quite food-based, but it will be awesome. If there is a single activation between midnight and 6 a.m., nobody wins a prize. Now, we've done this challenge many, many times, and only once has a class managed to achieve it. So let's see if you're going to be the guys that really maximize your learning fitness with 0 activations between midnight and 6 a.m. So that's your challenge for next week. So just to recap on what we're expecting today, I want to see all the things that I asked for last week finished. So your team page, scope and definitions page, and some evidence that you have discussed and mapped the contributions within your team, and some evidence of research and beginning to write. So I should start seeing some sources listed on your wiki, team bibliography, and then individual pages. Doesn't matter if they're finished, if you've got 2 sentences or 30 sentences, I want to see some evidence. Now, if you're working in a Google Doc, remember just copy and paste out at the end of the session onto your wiki so that we can see how it's coming together. It's also important because each team needs to be able to review the wikis of other teams, and you can't do that if it's in a Google Doc. So don't worry about the formatting and things like that, but just get the main content that you're generating safely into your wiki. Okay, so good luck. Any questions? Don't forget you can ask your co-learners or any of us during the session.